Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Tuesday nights recovery group, Changing Lanes. I am Darlene. I am here again. If you've tuned in last week and the week before, it was me. I'm here again. And I am a believer in the power of Jesus Christ, and He has helped me to overcome many things, but I still struggle with hurts, habits, and hang-ups. I also have Melissa here with us.
Hi guys, I'm Melissa, and I also believe in the power of Jesus and His powers to help me to overcome many things, but I do still struggle with things, and one thing I do struggle with is self-worth.
Amen. So as you guys all pop on, I just want to welcome everybody, and if you were with us last week, we were talking about codependency and some dysfunctional rules that are spoken and unspoken in our family systems. And I know we were talking a little bit about family systems, and you hear that popping up from last week and this week, but we have to realize that addiction is a family disease. And it could be drugs, it could be alcohol, it could be gambling, it could be shopping, traveling, whatever it is, it does affect the entire family. And so sometimes going forward, you have to go back. And I know in going through some of these dysfunctional rules, whether they were spoken to me or unspoken, it has helped me discover some areas of my life. And like I said last week, that discovery helps me and leads me to recovery. So discovery leads me to recovery. So being open and honest and letting God guide us through the process of recovery, you're going to come face to face with some things you might be uncomfortable with. But that's okay. That's why we have God, and that's why we have each other. Uncomfortable is good.
Yes.
So nobody changes when they're comfortable. But the codependency, like I said, it could emerge in any family system. Any family system where those spoken and unspoken rules exist. And these rules interfere with normal process of emotional, psychological, behavioral, and spiritual development. And we can go maybe so far sometimes in our development, and then we feel halted. And maybe you're wondering why you aren't growing, or your family seems to keep getting stuck in that same rut, or whatever it is. So hopefully something that we talk about tonight can help you discover something, and so you could lead you to recovery. So these rules close off and discourage healthy communication. That's what a lot of it is about. And eventually destroy a person's ability to form a trusting relationship with yourself. That's a crazy thing, but it's a true thing. To develop a trusting relationship with yourself, with other people, and even with God. So we did get through the first four. That's not quite half, but I like 4 better than 5 and 3.
I'm happy we're on 5.
Yeah. We have issues. So rule number 1 was, and we did discuss these last week, so if you didn't get a chance to sit in with us, I suggest, or you could go back and watch it if you want to get caught up on them. But rule number 1 was, it is not okay to talk about your problems. In recovery, we're like, you need to talk about some stuff. So rule number 2, it's not okay to talk about or express our feelings. Rule number 3, don't address issues or relationships directly. And rule number 4, always be perfect, always be good, and always be strong. And that's where we ended up. And like I said, again, these things maybe were never spoken to you, saying, sit down, we're having a family meeting, these are the rules. Don't ever talk about this. Don't ever directly deal with this. But they can be very in the atmosphere. You just know that was the rule because that's how everybody behaved and functioned.
Right.
Even if it was dysfunction. So tonight we were going to, with the help of God, get through the rest of them. We're going to start off with rule number 5. And the dysfunctional rule number 5 is don't be selfish. In a family system where this rule is rigidly applied to every situation, feelings of guilt and shame are certain to emerge, of course. It is a foreign idea for a codependent to accept the idea that it is normal at times to think of your own needs first. And we've taught that sometimes, but sometimes it is very important to think of your own needs first. In one scripture I can think of, it says, remove the mote out of your own eye before you try to move it out of somebody else's eye. And so we definitely need to take care of ourselves. But codependents usually have abandoned the point of taking care of themselves. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that tonight. We could actually get to the place where we believe our own needs are wrong. And then we'll never be able to directly ask for those needs to be met. And consequently, the codependent often tries to get personal needs met through manipulating or taking care of others. And if we don't become healthy in communicating what our needs are and seeking to get them met, we will go to manipulating to get them met, and guilty. So eventually this makes us overly dependent on others, and our whole existence becomes wrapped up in caretaking. One great thing that I've learned, there is a difference between caretaking and caregiving.
Right.
Because when you're caretaking, you're actually taking from somebody, and caregiving is actually you're giving care. And both seem right. And I know I mentioned last week, codependency, usually you're doing the wrong thing for the right reason.
Right.
So you might hear me say that a few times tonight. But the difference between caregiving and caretaking, you're taking away from somebody to be able to stand up on their own 2 feet and learn responsibility and functional life. Caregiving is a healthier way to approach it, and that's a whole nother topic. And who knows, we might get to that sometime. But you get so wrapped in caretaking. Without somebody to take care of, you actually feel you have no purpose or worth. The more time we spend taking care of others, the less time we have to devote to our own needs, and we can get lost in the shuffle, and in the end, we don't even know that we have needs or what they might be. And talking about needs, I'm talking about legitimate needs for just healthy functions and your own healthy state of being. I know as a mother, as a wife, and I'm sure as husbands and fathers or whatever, we all have responsibilities. And you could get very carried away very fast in that where you don't take care of yourself. And I know I guess as a mother, to think of yourself would seem very selfish sometimes.
Right.
And there's a balance in everything, of course. I'm not saying that we should be demanding of what we want, but we're talking about legitimate needs to be healthy, body, soul, and spirit. So when the people we are serving, do you have anything to add to that before I go on? Talking about taking care of our own needs or not feeling worth because of that?
I guess for me, really learning who I was and what my needs actually were, in a healthy way through Jesus. So understanding that I am redeemed, and I'm sanctified, and I'm justified, and I do have wisdom and peace, but it's through God, and that God's on my side. And I think it was like, probably if I were to go through it, and I think choice 2 really helped me, because it's where you're truly believing that God does exist, but also that I did matter to him, that what mattered to me matters to God. And so when I finally found that knowledge, and I finally had went through the recovery program a few times, it was when I learned what my true needs actually were, and not in my addictions and unhealthy.
Great point. Because when we can get caught up in the caretaking, just to feel like we have value or purpose, there's a threat or a possibility that when the people we are serving fail to recognize and appreciate all that we've been doing in caretaking, we can actually get to a place of being very resentful.
Absolutely.
And we could feel like we're being abused or getting taken advantage of. And it's really important. Recovery takes so much honesty.
It does.
How did I get here? What part was my fault? Because that's the only part we can do something about.
Exactly.
So we do need to come to that point of, okay, this happened, this person, but what part was my fault? That's what I have to deal with in order to recover.
Yes.
And so we can feel resentful, abused, or taken for granted because we were doing the wrong thing for the right reason. So, and then, of course, we feel angry, and then we feel selfish for feeling angry.
It's a vicious cycle.
And it becomes a very vicious cycle. And of course, through recovery, I know for me, choice 4, having that moral inventory over the resentments, and choice 6, and actually making amends and offering forgiveness, really helped me deal with all of that part of it. We continue to set ourselves up to be used. You teach people how to treat you.
Absolutely.
And we set ourselves up to be used, and we feel so wrong for putting ourselves first. And I know one of our meetings a little while back, we went through a codependency triangle, and at the top is the rescuer, or let's say caretaker. We feel like we have to take care of everybody, where we take their ability to take care of themselves away. So we step into rescue, and I know when we go through our rules, what we are and what we are not as a recovery group, one of the things is we do not fix each other. And so I think that whole meeting was about why we don't fix each other or seek to fix each other. And it's because if we step in as that rescuer or caretaker, what usually happens is the person that we're trying to fix or rescue likes getting that kind of a, treatment, or we take away their responsibility, so they're not going to stand on their own, and we try to persecute and control, and we think we're supposed to be fixing them, and why aren't they getting fixed? And we get frustrated, and we start to get angry at them, and then they start to get angry at us. I thought you're supposed to be helping me, and it's all this whole weird scenario. And then all of a sudden, we're the victim rather than the rescuer, and then we seek to look for someone else to rescue, and this whole thing goes around and around and around.
Yeah.
So it's a crazy cycle. And in this whole thing, we lose ourselves. We forget about ourselves. And no wonder we think God has abandoned us. It's because we have abandoned ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's such a powerful point to make. And I know this hits home with me personally. You feel so alone, like everybody you ever served, everything you ever did, no one ever appreciated, all that kind of stuff goes through your head, and you even feel like God has abandoned you. I was trying to do good. I was only trying to do the right thing, God, and not even you are there. But the truth is, God hasn't abandoned us. We have abandoned ourselves, and He really wants and desires for us to take care of ourselves. So yeah. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Melissa?
I think just to understanding how important it was for me to take that time with God and to be able to recharge and do self-care. And when I started doing that, and when I really started investing in myself and feeling like I was worth something, to be able to watch God's work in my family, because when we're taken care of and when we take care of ourselves is when we can actually have that energy to be able to perform the way that we're supposed to be performing.
Right. And I know sometimes the first thing that pops into our mind when we say self-care is like, okay, I'm going to take some self-care. I picture myself in a bubbly bathtub with candles and a cup of tea, and I'm taking care of myself.
Right.
But to me, I've really realized that a self-care is being honest with myself.
Yeah.
Taking myself to the altar of the great physician, Jesus, and letting Him heal me and take care of the areas that need to get taken care of. So It's a little bit different of a picture
Yeah.
in my mind anyway, but my mind's a funny place. um, but, we can be gentle with ourselves. We don't have to be so hard on ourselves, compassionate and accepting of ourselves. And maybe then that's when we can develop true compassion for others, true compassion, where we end up helping people, caregiving rather than the caretaking, and things start in more healthy cycles in our life. I know for me, this really hit home. And when I was a young girl, there was something that I really wanted. We weren't rich, we were very poor. And I just wanted this little thing so bad. And I asked my dad, and he got it for me. And I couldn't believe that he got it for me, because alcohol usually was the priority. And it really wasn't even about the thing anymore. It was about the fact that Dad got it for me. Mm-hmm. And when we got home, I heard him talking to my mom about how selfish of a child I was. And I didn't realize how much that had actually damaged me for my entire life. But even now, I struggle with feelings of selfishness when I go to buy something. And if it's a significant purchase, I'll actually still have to ask my husband to go and pay for it for me, because I struggle with the feelings of selfishness, and I'm working on that. So, learning to ask directly for what we need stops us from manipulating others and ripping them off to get our needs met. This is a very good point. For example, when we need to take time off but won't until others insist so that they can be spared our irritability and self-righteous martyr routine. That's me. Our need for rest must be met, but our guilt would not allow for it. So we actually sin against others to get them to force us to meet our needs while we still keep our false belief in our own spirituality intact. That's a pure example of manipulation. Yeah. And you wouldn't think it was manipulation. But I had to admit that I do that. Exactly. I've done that, right? We learn that very few situations in life are ever improved by neglecting ourselves. Things just don't get improved that way. Learning to trust God's grace is a huge part in learning to take care of yourself.
It's true, yeah.
Okay, rule number 6. This one's kind of explanatory. Do as I say, not as I do. This rule, more than any other, teaches us how to not trust. When we were children, sometimes we were told by our parents or whoever to be honest, and yet we see them being dishonest.
Right. And
we will eventually, as children and as adults, we can become very confused about what is do as I say, not as I do. Don't eat that cake. This is really bad for you. Don't ever drink because it'll wreck your life. All those kind of things. Do as I say, not as I do. And so we stop trusting and begin to count only on ourselves. Yeah. Because we don't know what to trust. You're saying not to do this, but you do this. It's can become very confusing. And this is protection from our pain, to just start to rely on yourself. And that's where things really get bad.
Yep, because self doesn't get us in very good places.
No, actually, like Choice One says, life becomes very unmanageable when we rely on ourselves. So, and as that child, we lack trust in our parents' love. We begin to feel insecure with ourselves, and we end up developing a real fear of abandonment in all of our relationships. And I had to go back and think about my own, okay, when did I do this with my kids? I need to try to go back and redo this. Because it was a behavioral thing. I didn't even know I might have been doing it. But I want to have clear communication with my children. So, but to avoid being abandoned, even though we develop a fear of it, we turn to, okay, I'm afraid that my husband's going to leave me. And this was very real for me. I was afraid he was going to leave me, so I have to please him, please him, please him. He loved it, but I was exhausted. Sorry. manipulating and caretaking behaviors, I abandon myself and I become divided inside. Things are not going well. And we feel compelled to deny who we really are to others and how we're really feeling. And in the end, being phony means that we can never know for sure if the people that are close to us like us for who we are or what we are doing.
Yeah.
Oh, that hits me in the gut.
Yep.
It's horrible.
So true.
You know, fake it till you make it can become a very bad habit.
Yep.
You just learn how to fake it.
Yep.
It cannot become habitual. So it turns to a constant fear of being rejected or being found out who we really are. And then that's where image management becomes a primary. And we want to control what people think about us and what parts they see about us.
Yeah, it's true. And I remember what it was like to behave contrary to what I was portraying on the outside. And it was so tiresome. And, you know, I was always worried, you know, if I was going to change the wrong mask at the wrong time or something. And but coming to know that God wants us to be authentic.
Right.
And that comes to us asking God to help us understand our defects, but then also submitting to Him and allowing Him to help us change. And for me, it's been so important to stay consistent and to practice what I preach.
Right.
It's so important to be consistent in walking in my choices and in changing lanes, and I can tell if I'm not working them.
Right.
It's very quick, and my whole family can tell. So, but to be consistent in walking in those has given me that confidence and that peace and the assurance through Jesus. So
very true. And when we talk about, you know, I can feel the real fear that is real. I know it's easy to talk about these things, and it's another thing to actually walk it out through the choices.
Yeah.
And I can feel that fear hit me. Okay, but if I stop doing, are people really going to like me? I don't even know if I like me because I don't even know me.
Yeah.
I've abandoned me. But it does, like you said, it goes back to where it originated, and that's God's love for us.
Yes.
And to let go of the bondage from the fears to bonding with God helps heal over these areas. And that has been one definite avenue that has helped me.
Yeah.
The codependent obsession with doing right at the cost of not being true to themselves perpetuates and just deepens that sense of shame.
Yeah.
You have got to come to a place of being true to yourself, being honest with yourself. The codependent actually knows a lot about the truth about yourself because we spend a lot of time of trying to avoid it.
Absolutely. It's true.
By those masks or by addictions or by whatever methods it is, we just try to avoid the truth. We're kind of aware of it.
Yeah.
Denial, you know, is a tricky thing, but so all right, rule 7. We're skipping through. There's so much to get through in studying for this. We're both like, oh, but we don't want to miss out on that. What if somebody needs to hear that? And, oh, this feels home with me. So, Rule 7, it is not okay to play. Crazy.
That's a bad one for me.
And, like, it's so crazy. And maybe it's just me. But when I hear this, I'm like, no one ever really told me that. And yet I believed it.
Right?
It was just there. It's not okay.
It's that unspoken part.
Yes. Isn't it crazy?
It spoke in my life.
Yes.
So loud.
Very true. The codependent believes that the world is just a very serious place. And life is viewed as difficult and almost always painful because in some scenarios, it is always painful and very difficult, especially if you've had issues at home with alcohol, drugs, abuse in the home. It is a very serious thing, and that's all you've ever seen from life. It has robbed you.
Yeah.
So this rule leads to the development of negative thinking and a view of oneself as unlovable, boring, stupid, ugly, and wrong.
Yeah.
It's very damaging. This rule causes the codependent always to be working twice as hard just to feel okay and catch up to other people.
Yeah.
So, like having a project to work on sometimes, or some crisis to deal with, see those kind of scenarios. In time, the codependent becomes preoccupied with stuff that is more or less importance than the actual issue itself, or than themselves. Whether it's kids, in-laws, jobs, friends, health, wealth, religion, whatever it is, we get lost to really what it is about. And our preoccupations become a substitute for living,
Yeah.
which means our whole identity becomes what we do.
Rather than who we are.
Right.
Right.
It's very tragic to see how many Christians are lost in the house and just to doing, and not on the foundation of a relationship with Jesus himself.
Yeah.
And I know I've gotten myself to those places too, just in the doing. And in anything, and this time I'm thankful that I've come back to a place of, I feel, a strong foundation of a relationship with the Lord, and not just with the church itself.
Yeah.
But we see play as a waste of time and also a threat to our identity. How can play be a threat to your identity? Well, after all, really serious people don't play. They're business, all business. And over time, it means it is important to always have something to do. Having fun is not productive, and it's not okay. Play is spontaneous, so it can make us look foolish or childish. Children are troubled, and dysfunctional families lose much of their childhoods. They grow up early to take care of themselves, or maybe their parents or their siblings. Many never learned how to play and enjoy life. Anything you want to share there?
Well, for me, this one is really hard to talk about. So it's affected the way I am. It's affected the way that I've raised my children, treated people around me. But and I started young. I started working at 12 years old, and because of my I was medicated very early for my mental health, and abusing the prescription medications and stuff. And for me, I always had to stay busy. If I wasn't staying busy, if I wasn't working, if I wasn't doing something for somebody so that they would see my worth, all I could do was I was just so consumed about my problems and me. And
Just one sec. How long have you been free now from prescription drugs?
it's been a year and a half.
That's awesome.
Yes, thank God.
The recovery process.
Yes.
Awesome.
And it comes down right. Even I became a stepmom before I even graduated high school, because I needed to have that job. And I came into a relationship where I was trying to, I guess, rescue, but I didn't need to be rescuing. But I would make jobs for myself to stay busy and stuff. And it really, you can see the repercussions of that in my older children, and that's a hard one for me to swallow. I struggle really bad over it, and I think I can pinpoint exactly where the whole realization came to me, where this is exactly what I was doing, and I needed to break that cycle of dimming my children's shine and people around me and stuff. And we were doing our roof last fall, and people were just throwing stuff off the roof and stuff, and there was messes everywhere. And as that was happening, one of my daughters was collecting a bunch of garbage, and to me it was garbage. It was stuff that needed to go in the dumpster. It was shingles. It was pieces of wood. She was unscrewing screws from wood, and she was going and putting it into piles in the yard, but not the piles for garbage. And it was really frustrating. And I was so mean. I was mean. And I'm just like yelling and saying, like, quit making messes, and you're never, like, what are you doing? You're not going to do anything with it. It's just making more of a mess for me. And I was feeling chaotic inside, and I was dimming her shine because of that. And it was a couple days later, and she had an entire agility course for a dog. She's never built anything, and she was taking tools, and she handmade an entire agility course. And a couple days later,
And it was a phenomenal one.
it really was, and like something I could never even imagine doing. I would not know how to do that. And she told me to come outside and look, and she had one of my sheep running this agility course. And
Was it the one that wears a diaper?
Yes. It was Gary, my sheep. He has his own Facebook page if you're interested in knowing about him. But anyways,
I didn't know that.
He was doing his agility, and it was just then it clicked. It was like, how terrible I made her feel and how inadequate. And, after reading the Boundaries book, I had read a Boundaries book, and phenomenal information, but learning what my role actually is as a parent, and my role is to help my children find their purpose and their what they're needed for in God's kingdom. And I totally dimmed her shine on that. And it was then that I was just like, this has to stop. It has to stop right now. And now, when she tells me she's going to build something, I say, go for it, please. Awesome. But definitely, yeah, it's a definite hard one to swallow for me.
And I find it intriguing that you said when she was making these piles, you said, you're making more mess for me.
And it was that mess inside. It was that chaos inside, but I couldn't. Yeah, it's true.
It is inside, and it is our caretaking that we
Absolutely.
think, I'm going to have to clean this up. I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to have to do this. And that's the example of that codependent mind. Like, I'm going to have to do for everybody. So what you're doing affects me because I do. Yeah, it's just a whole cycle of, how we think.
It's true.
I know the Bible says that the joy of the Lord is our strength. And so when we reject joy or don't allow joy to happen, or we haven't had much joy in our life because of our situations, we don't get that strength that we need.
It's true.
And so to actually allow joy to happen in our lives, that it is okay to have joy. Even I know I've struggled with this as well. Even feeling like if I felt overly blessed, I was like, I shouldn't. I shouldn't feel blessed right now. And I know I had a conversation with Sister Hernandez several times when she came up, and it was about interior design. I love decorating, and I love doing that kind of stuff. And I talked to her, and I was sure she was going to agree with me. And I said, I don't feel like God wants me to do this, to decorate and have all this, thing. And she said, why wouldn't God want you to do it? I said, because I just feel like I enjoy it too much. And she said, why wouldn't God want you to enjoy something? And I'm like, I don't know. And she said, Darlene, you do not have to join a convent to live for God.
That's so true.
You can actually have joy in your life. And I'm like, so you're not agreeing with me. So you're not, my dysfunctional thoughts are wrong. You're telling me. And I was really appreciative of that. I love her so much. I'm praying for her family. But it's so true, like feeling that I wasn't good enough to be blessed, I wasn't good enough to experience joy, because that means life has gotten confusing for me, because I'm so used to it being so serious all the time.
So true.
And even coming to a Pentecostal church, I was raised in a very staunch church. So coming into an atmosphere where there was lots of joy happening was like, I don't know, I don't feel comfortable here at first. Like, what's happening? Church people aren't supposed to be joyful.
That's exactly what Melina said.
It's very, rigid.
Yeah.
And so it was a transition, but I'm very thankful for it. And the joy is What a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
What an absolute blessing to receive that into your life.
It's true. Melena actually said that to me because I sacrificed her to test the waters, to come to church first. So she came a couple times first, and she's like, Mom, I think you would get used to it, but at first you're going to be really uncomfortable because people are like
Happy.
jumping and happy, and they hug, and I'm like, oh no, I sit in the very corner for so long, but I love it now, though.
That's
I
awesome.
love it.
You actually hug. Yeah.
I do hug sometimes.
Sometimes. When this is all over, we will.
Right?
So as adults, it can become very awkward to learn to play and enjoy life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not functional,
No.
you know. To risk shaking off that premature or strained adulthood or negative role models forced upon us very early in life, or situations forced upon us very early in life. Yet it is important. It is an important way to move towards good mental health and emotional health and recovery and a real appreciation for the joys of life. Smelling the roses along the way.
Yep, it's true.
And there is a balance. I'm not saying kids shouldn't have any responsibility, but they should learn the joy of building a course,
Yes.
you know, and being supported in that. Awesome. Okay, rule number 8. Don't talk about sex. Should we just skip this one then?
I'm good.
Don't talk about sex. We have many rules and prohibitions regarding sex. But by and large, the overriding rule is you just don't talk about it.
Right.
Spoken or unspoken. I think this one probably was a spoken rule in a lot of dysfunctional homes.
Yeah.
Our culture has tended to minimize the importance of our sexuality and basic need to talk about it. And this has created a lot of issues, I believe. It did in my life. Even before birth, our sexuality starts to play a significant role in our lives, where our genders are determined and all that kind of stuff. So the shame and anxiety associated with unresolved sexual issues is directly proportional to the length of time that codependents have lived by the don't talk rules. So since this is a cultural norm, many people will be stifled in their search for a clear identity until certain issues are addressed. A clear and healthy understanding of sex and sexuality depends largely on our early experiences in these vital relationships when we are most vulnerable. Of course, for me, my life was completely sabotaged with a very unhealthy teacher of what sex was and sexuality was. I was 6 years old, and there is a lie out there that says it is good to view pornography as an educational tool. I can testify that it was a very bad tool for me. And it really confused a lot of things in my mind about what sex was. I looked at sex as my worth. I got confused about who and what I should be attracted to in watching those types of things and looking at those types of things from a very small or young age. So, and that shame over our sexuality is largely due to us being uninformed and misinformed.
Yeah.
And many misinterpretations of actually, as well, what the Bible teaches about the marriage bed. What does God say? Like, God created sex to be a beautiful, pleasurable thing within the confines of a marriage between a man and a woman.
Yeah.
And this is something that has been turned into something very ugly and looked at as very sinful or very, we just don't talk about it. But we cannot leave our children up to the teachers of the world.
So true.
We should teach them about the goodness of what the Bible talks about, and we do need to talk about it.
Yeah.
So,
because of my past, I've actually always looked at sex as a punishment or a dirty thing. So this has been an extremely slow process for me in my recovery, but it is helpful, though, to be able to be understanding that it was a beautiful gift made by God to give to my husband.
right.
So, and I have to stay focused on that so that I don't get resentful and angry. And that's working those choices and submitting to God my character defects and asking for help to change those. And also learning in choice 6 to forgive people and let go of resentments.
That's true.
Yeah.
And that I'm sure has affected a lot of people's lives when there are, different situations and different experiences with abuse or physical abuse or sexual abuse or all of those types of things. There is recovery. You need a recovery process. We all need recovery for different aspects around this whole. It's a vast topic.
Absolutely.
And we do need to talk about it. We
Yeah.
do need to talk about the recovery process of being misinformed and misguided, and then the healthy gifts that can come to us, given to us through the Word of God, and the issue of that. Okay, the last one.
Yay.
Don't rock the boat. Rule number 9. Every family is in fact a system. And like I say, we talk about families. You can put it as, because I said, addiction and issues affect the entire family. If I have an issue, I know I have an issue. And my issue affects my entire family. So, as we are a system, the family rules help each person to know their part that gets played out in the family drama. And I think that's the premise of most reality shows. Really, the reality TV shows is just the family drama playing out. And you could probably pinpoint who's playing what role. So each person, it just kind of falls into place, and what roles. And there are specific roles, scapegoats and jokers and rescuers and all those type of things that... but each person finds that special part like actors in a play. And every day you know your script. So the family rules tell us what is right, what is wrong, what is appropriate, what is age appropriate, all that kind of stuff. But healthy families are able to flex and accommodate to changes and challenges and still stay intact.
Right.
And remember, healthy families are not the ones that think they're perfect or that are perceived as perfect. A healthy family is somebody who actually faces these challenges and faces their issues and works through them and stays intact.
It's true.
I really like that. Dysfunctional families with unresolved chemical dependency, physical or sexual abuse, all those kind of things, also maintain to keep a balance, but it is a very unhealthy one. So it doesn't mean it's like the parable where it says that, you build, somebody built their house on the sand and somebody built it upon the rock, and when the storm came, the one that was built on the sand washed away. Well, the point is they both had to face the storm.
Yeah.
And one got washed away. It's because they didn't have the foundation.
Yeah.
And so learning about the Lord and learning about the tools and choices of recovery actually help us have a good foundation that when storms come, we stay intact.
Yep.
And that is a healthy family.
Yeah.
Not a healthy family or a healthy individual is not one who denies that a storm is there.
Yeah,
that's just creating a bigger storm. So.
Yep.
Now the flaw or the catch 22 in an unhealthy system is there is no permission for healthy change. No permission for healthy change. Like, for example, if dad will not stop drinking, nobody wants to confront him because it might upset him. And you can insert drinking with whatever the issue is, And besides, if he stopped drinking, then everybody would have to change. And change, even if it is for the better, is very frightening. I moved a mirror off our fireplace. My husband didn't like the change. It's funny how change can affect us.
Yeah.
And I'm picking on him because he's not up here tonight.
Don't say it too loud. He might get up here.
That's true. But a key to I don't like change in different aspects as well, so I'm just as guilty. But a key to recovery is overcoming the fear of change. And we go through that in choice 1 until the pain of your circumstance exceeds your fear of change, you won't get help.
Yeah,
at all.
that's true.
So we can go into that about codependency and enablement, and taking away people's pain actually prolongs their own personal recovery.
It
But
definitely does.
anyway, when one person is in an unhealthy system and gets help and moves into real recovery, it throws the whole system into crisis.
Mm-hmm.
So dad realizes he's an alcoholic. He wants to get help. And you think that would be a good thing, but we have to realize it affects the entire family.
Yeah.
Alcohol affects the entire family. Recovery affects the entire family.
It's true.
When the enabling codependent caretaker decides to stop rescuing, when the aspects of codependency, the irresponsible family members, it is predictable that they will provoke crisis and situations to draw the caretaker back into meeting their needs and cleaning up their messes.
Mm-hmm.
It goes both ways. Alcoholism and codependency, addiction and codependency, and like that enabling, that's a whole another session, I believe. But even though they may verbally agree that they need to become more self-reliant and know the right words to press the caretaker's guilt buttons, they are invested in keeping the family system intact.
Right.
So you can say they want to keep the system intact, the family together,
Mm-hmm.
and it's perceived as a threat for somebody to step out and become healthy, because we realize how unhealthy we all are.
That's right.
In the system, and you're doing the wrong thing for the right reason.
Yeah.
You want to keep your family together, but you're going about it the wrong way.
Yeah.
Unconsciously, other family members seek to sabotage a person's recovery in very insidious ways, like chemical temptations.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine? Gossip, ostracizing them for their attempts of recovery, all those types of things. A troubled family will destroy one member to keep its denial system from being penetrated or exposed by the truth of the entire situation.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, I think you've had some experience with that.
I've definitely had experience with that. It was this one and number 7 that were really hard for me to swallow, but sorry. In this one, actually having to admit that I was the stressor, and I'm not the codependent, but the stressor, so I was the one that caused this stuff, the dysfunction in my family. And when I started my process of recovery, and I was having testimony after testimony of the work of God in my life, but at the same time, everything seemed to get chaotic. I had one of my sons leave my home. My husband was less than impressed with all of the changes, and in the beginning, now it's amazing. He's very supportive, but in the beginning it was fearful for him too, because it wasn't familiar for him. He didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't even know who I was anymore. But it was almost like a threat, because I wasn't calling him to rescue me all the time. My oldest daughter at home, I took that mother role away. She was the mother in our house since she was 8 years old, and I took that away in the chaos in our home. But I was praying, and I was reading my Bible. I was going to church, and it felt like the more that I did, that everything around me was rocking. It was still rocking and shaking, but it wasn't until I took that courage and I let my faith empower me by letting go and letting God. Mm-hmm. And when I did that, I realized that my ship, it could still rock, and it could go over big waves and little waves, but it wasn't sinking. It couldn't sink. It wasn't sinking like it used to. Mm-hmm.
Would you say it was anchored?
It was definitely anchored, the best anchor out there.
Right.
And everything is worked out, and it was really hard for me to allow it to work out on God's timing and not my timing. But when I did allow that, the the way that our family has fallen into place now, and the healing, and it's been incredible to be able to watch that change. So and it comes down to that choice 3 of committing my life's care to Jesus. And when I did that, and choice 8 even, where I allow him to use me in my weakness. It's okay to be weak sometimes, and to allow God to use me in my weakness, to be able to bring hope and change to my life, but also being able to be a light to other people's lives. So
Awesome. Weathering the storm.
weathering the storm.
And don't rock the boat in dysfunctional homes. They don't realize how the hole in the boat,
Yep.
And when, like I said, when one person steps out to become healthier, it affects the whole system. It affects the whole ship. And it is true, being anchored to the right things and that faith that when you're stepping out into realms to recover and become a healthier version of you, so many unknowns. But that's why I love that we one thing we do know is we do know that our higher power is Jesus Christ.
That's right.
And that is the rock, that is the anchor, that is the foundation. Because there's so many things we do not know. Why throw another one into the mix? We know who the power is that's going to get us through. We're not relying on ourselves.
Yeah.
It's not about what we are going to do any longer, or what we can do, or what we have to do.
Yeah.
It's that surrender, like you said, to him, and he's going to do it. We just have to keep walking. We just have to doing the process. We just have to keep our faith in him and doing what we know to do, and being faithful to him, and he will do what he has to do.
It's true, yeah.
So don't rock the boat is that stern injunction which looks at each individual family member inside their unhealthy rules. Their other unhealthy rules, sorry. It suppresses change, hinders growth, and obstructs any hope of recovery. You feel locked in. And even when you realize how unhealthy you are and you try to get help, something tries to lock you into that system.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first, I was a very vile woman before I gave my life to God. Drinking, swearing, riotous living. I was just vile in every way. And had a change happen in me when I came into the presence of God. And I stopped doing some of those things. And I had 2 very well-meaning family members say to me, "We're really worried about you." And I was like, "Why are you worried?" "Well, you're not drinking, smoking, going out. You're not doing anything. You don't go on like you used to go." And I'm like, "But that's good."
It's true.
And they've come to realize that it was good, but it was so different than from my regular dysfunction, even though my dysfunctional life was so unhealthy and bad. Just that change caused worry.
Yeah.
And they love me. I know one of those sisters prayed for me and still prays for me all the time. She's an anchor for great support for me. But just the change caused so much confusion on what's happening. Where's everything settling here, So, and I've come to realize, even in ministry and lots of times in the past 14 years, even as pastoring, you see somebody come to church, one spouse, one child, whatever, and the other spouse or children or family members or friend systems don't like it. They have a hard time with it.
Yep.
And the ostracizing, the temptations, all that. And I can admit that I have in the past saying, "Oh, that's just the devil. They're just, being used by..." But at the same time, it's stepping back and realizing maybe they're just uncomfortable in the change, and giving some grace and allowance to working with the entire family system rather than just the individual making the step.
It's true.
Because change is scary and for everybody. And I'm thankful for God bringing this kind of knowledge and understanding, not only for my own personal recovery, but helping others in recovering, helping families recover, not just a person, but a family's recover. And I remember at the beginning of the Life's Healing Choices book, it said that a man was busy with his work and his son wanted his attention, and he needed like 10 more minutes to finish his work. And there was a magazine there, and there was a picture of a globe, and he took it and he ripped it into like 50 pieces, 60 pieces, and gave the boy Scotch tape and said, "Put this back together." And he said, "Surely he doesn't know anything about geography. It'll take him at least 10 minutes. I'll be done way before him." And within a minute, the little boy was tugging on his arm. He said, "I'm done, Dad." And he looked at it, he said, "How in the world did you know where all those countries went, or how the world, looked?" And he said, "Oh, well, on the back of that picture, there was a picture of a person. And if I knew I could get the person back together, the world would eventually come back together too."
So good.
And it's not just about the person, it's about the people surrounding the person sometime, and giving that grace and that allowance, and working with family systems in recovery, not just individuals. And I know that Melissa already mentioned the boundaries book. We had been talking about a little bit we talked a little bit about boundaries. We had some confusion on what boundaries were.
Yep.
And so we had a panel discussion on that. But within the next few weeks, we are going to actually start an online book study on the Book of Boundaries. And the thing is with codependency is a lack of boundaries. And this is a biblical-based book. Some of us are familiar with Cloud and Townsend boundaries on marriage, children, family, yourself, all those kind of things. But this is all of those compiled into one book.
Yeah.
So we are going to, in the next few weeks, be watching for an announcement. We are trying to progress in getting a book study out on that to help with some of these issues that we face in codependency. Maybe you've discovered some things that you need some help with, and we don't just want to plop, "Here's your problem" on you, but also give some steps of recovery and tools of recovery to help overcome those things.
That's right. Yeah.
So, and then we can start doing the right thing for the right reason.
Yeah.
And
that's exciting to watch.
Yes.
When that starts unfolding.
It's so true. Doing the right thing for the right reason.
Yeah.
So thank you all for joining us. It's 8 o'clock. And hopefully we ministered to somebody tonight and encouraged somebody. I was encouraged. I'm always encouraged talking about these things. So I thank you, Melissa, for sitting with us tonight.
Thanks for inviting me.
And I'm going to ask you to close in prayer.
Okay. So, thank you, Jesus, for always being our firm foundation, and for being there when our boats are rocking, and helping us to get through those storms, the big waves and the little waves, but for keeping our boats afloat. And God, you are so good to us, and even in times like now, over and over again, you show up and help us continue our recovery walks. I ask you, Jesus, that you would fill each person watching tonight with your loving embrace, helping us to continue our faithful walks with you in our recovery from our hurts, habits, and hang-ups. God, we love you and we praise you. In your mighty name, amen.
Somebody said one time, the roughest seas make the best sailors. And some of us been through some rough seas, but sometimes that makes the best sailors. In our weakness, we are strong.
Yes.
Amen.
Amen.
Have a great, blessed night. We are here. If you need to talk to somebody, contact somebody, you can message me or Melissa via Facebook.
Yep.
Have a great and blessed night.